What happens when a true music icon finally gets fed up with being talked down to by a talk show host who thinks she has all the answers? Well, you're about to hear about one of the most jaw-dropping moments daytime television has ever seen. Chaka Khan, the undisputed queen of funk, didn't just clap back at Joy Behar on The View. She shut the whole thing down, leaving the studio frozen and the audience stunned. This wasn't your usual awkward celebrity interview. It was a masterclass in responding to disrespect with grace, confidence, and surgical precision. Before we get into this unforgettable showdown, make sure you subscribe and drop a comment about how you feel when celebrities stand their ground instead of smiling through disrespect. The tension started the moment Chaka Khan walked onto the set. Something felt off right away. Joy Behar wore that familiar smug expression she gets when she thinks she's about to lecture someone, completely unaware she was sitting across from someone who wouldn't play along. The other hosts, Whoopi, Sarah, Sunny, and Alyssa, sensed the energy shifting, though none of them could have imagined what was about to unfold. Joy opened with what sounded like an innocent question, but anyone familiar with her tone could hear the condescension baked into it. "So, Chaka," she said, "you've been in the music business for, 50 years now? That must feel like forever in pop music." Chaka Khan, dressed in a commanding purple outfit that demanded respect, locked eyes with Joy, the same fearless gaze that's unsettled industry power players for decades. "Actually, Joy," she replied calmly, "I've been fortunate to have a career spanning more than 5 decades, and unlike some people in television, I've managed to stay relevant without tearing others down." The audience shifted in their seats. This wasn't the polite celebrity small talk they were used to. Chaka had fired a warning shot. And Joy, true to form, failed to recognize it. Joy let out that familiar, forced laugh, the one she uses when she's been checked but wants to keep the upper hand. "Well, someone's feisty today. I'm just saying the industry's changed so much. Do young people even know who you are anymore?" Whoopi tried to lighten the moment. "Come on, Joy. Everybody knows Chaka Khan." But Chaka raised a hand, never breaking eye contact. "Let me stop you right there. Young people absolutely know who I am. They sample my music, cover my songs, and show me more respect in 5 minutes than you've managed in 30 seconds. She paused, then added, "But let me ask you something. When was the last time someone under 40 knew your name for anything other than being loud and wrong on television?" The studio went completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. Sarah looked like she wanted to disappear under the table, and Sunny's mouth hung open in disbelief. This was live, TV at its most uncomfortable. Joy's face flushed as she tried to regain control. "I've been doing television longer than most people have been alive. I think I know how to conduct an interview." Chaka leaned back, perfectly composed, like an artist preparing the final stroke. "Oh, you think this is an interview? I thought this was you trying to make yourself feel important by minimizing my accomplishments. That's the difference between us, Joy. I build people up with my art. You tear them down with your words." Now scrambling, Joy backtracked. "I wasn't trying to diminish anything. I was just making conversation." "No," Chaka replied evenly. "You were being disrespectful, and I'm tired of it." Her voice was calm, but carried decades of experience. "You walked in suggesting my career was over, questioned my relevance, and acted like you're some authority on music and culture. You're not." The cameras cut to the other hosts, all visibly uncomfortable. Whoopi looked like she was witnessing a slow-motion crash, while Sarah seemed to be silently begging for a commercial break. Joy tried to laugh it off once more, but her voice wavered. "Well, I certainly didn't mean any disrespect." "Oh, you did," Chaka said firmly. "I've been around long enough to recognize game playing, and I don't play games. I end them." The audience was fully locked in. This wasn't just a clash of personalities. It was a seasoned artist reminding a talk show host what happens when you underestimate intelligence, experience, and grace under pressure. Joy grew defensive. "I think you're overreacting." "Overreacting?" Chaka raised her eyebrows, and everyone knew that was the wrong move. Overreacting would be me walking off this set and telling the world who you really are behind the cameras. Overreacting would be me showing receipts of how guests are treated when you think no one's watching. What I'm doing right now is giving you a chance to apologize and keep some dignity. Joy, now visibly shaken, shot back. "I don't need to apologize for doing my job." "Your job," Chaka replied instantly, "is to interview guests, not insult them. And since you mentioned jobs, let's talk about mine. My job has been creating music that moves people's souls for over 50 years. Your job, on the other hand, seems to be sitting at that table and making people uncomfortable with a breathtaking amount of ignorance. I'd say one of us is clearly better at what they do than the other." The co-hosts traded uneasy glances, caught between loyalty and the obvious truth that Joy had walked straight into this on her own. Alyssa Farah Griffin looked like she was mentally filing away every second of the exchange as a lesson in how to handle conflict with poise. Joy grew more irritated by the moment, realizing her usual tactics weren't working on someone who had stood up to ruthless executives, demanding producers, and decades of industry politics. "I've been nothing but professional," Joy insisted. Chaka let out a laugh sharp enough to cut glass. "Professional? Joy, if this is what you call professional, I'd hate to see what you consider rude. You've spent the last 5 minutes questioning my relevance, my impact, and implying my career belongs in a museum. In what world does that qualify as professionalism?" The tension in the room was suffocating, and Chaka was far from finished. Joy felt the pressure, and instead of backing down, chose to dig herself in deeper. "Look, things are getting a little heated. This is supposed to be a fun interview about your new project." Chaka tilted her head slightly, like a hunter sizing up its target. "So you spend 10 minutes trying to tear me down, and the moment I respond, you suddenly want to keep it light and change the subject?" The audience didn't make a sound. This had crossed beyond entertainment. It was now a textbook example of how to confront disrespect with absolute precision. Joy tried to reclaim authority. "I was never trying to tear you down. You're being overly sensitive." The words landed like a thunderclap. Whoopi's eyes widened. Sarah audibly gasped. Sunny pressed a hand to her forehead in disbelief. Joy had just labeled Chaka Khan, a woman who had survived decades of industry politics, sexism, and racism, as overly sensitive. Chaka's response was devastating in its calm. "Overly sensitive? Joy, let me explain something. When you've survived what I've survived, when you've had to prove yourself again and again to people who didn't want you to succeed, you learn exactly how to recognize someone trying to diminish you. And that's what you've been doing since the moment I sat down." Joy stumbled, sensing she'd gone too far. "I don't think that's fair." "Fair?" Chaka leaned forward, her voice lowering into a dangerous, deliberate tone. "You want to talk about fair? Is it fair to invite me here to discuss my work, and then spend your time questioning whether I'm still relevant? Is it fair to speak to me like I'm some newcomer who doesn't understand this business, and when I defend myself, you label me overly sensitive?" Joy searched her co-hosts for support, but they were wise enough to stay silent. "I just think we got off on the wrong foot." "No, Joy. We got off on the foot you chose. You decided to open this conversation with disrespect, and now you're surprised I'm not smiling and accepting it." Chaka's words landed with surgical accuracy. "That's the issue with people like you. You think being a guest on your show means accepting whatever treatment you hand out." The cameras captured every strained expression, every uneasy shift. Joy was visibly sweating now, completely outmatched by someone with decades of experience handling difficult personalities. Then, Joy made her worst mistake yet. I don't have to sit here and be lectured by you." The studio fell into a silence so deep you could hear the cameras hum. Chaka leaned back slowly, a knowing smile forming, the kind everyone in the room recognized as dangerous. "Oh, but you do, Joy. You created this moment. You could have chosen respect. You could have chosen professionalism. You could have actually done your job. Instead, you tried to make yourself look important. By making me look small." She paused. "The problem with that strategy is simple. I don't do small, honey. I do legendary." Joy's voice climbed higher, strained and defensive. "You're completely mischaracterizing what happened." "Am I?" Chaka replied smoothly. "Let's review." She counted on her fingers. "First, you implied my 50-year career was ancient history. Then you questioned whether young people know who I am. When I responded calmly, you called me feisty. When I continued to defend myself, you told me I was overreacting and overly sensitive." She looked straight at Joy. "Did I miss anything? Or would you like to add a few more insults?" Joy was trapped, and everyone could see it. "That's not how I meant it." "Oh, but it is exactly how you meant it," Chaka said evenly. "You're just not used to being called out. You're used to celebrities smiling, taking the hit, and leaving quietly." She leaned in, eyes unwavering. "But I'm not most celebrities. Joy, I'm Chaka Khan. And I didn't get where I am by allowing anyone to disrespect me." Whoopi finally stepped in, clearly trying to pull the show back from the brink. "Ladies, maybe we should all take a breath." Chaka turned toward Whoopi with a calm, respectful nod. "Whoopi, I have nothing but respect for you and for this show. But your colleague chose to start something she clearly can't finish, and I'm not going to pretend that's okay just to keep things comfortable." Joy scrambled to regain control. "I've done this show for years. I've interviewed thousands of people. And how many of them told you the truth about how you made them feel?" Chaka fired back instantly. "How many of them went home feeling respected and valued? Because based on the last 15 minutes, I can promise you, I'm not the first guest you've treated this way. I'm just the first with enough confidence and experience to call it out." Sarah looked like she wanted the ground to open up beneath her chair, while Alyssa watched closely, clearly absorbing every move Chaka made under pressure. Joy tried one last escape. "Maybe we should move on and talk about your music." Chaka laughed, full, rich, and echoing through the studio. "Now you want to talk about my music after spending all this time suggesting it doesn't matter anymore?" She shook her head. "You don't get to insult someone and then ask them to perform for you. That's not how respect works." Joy's face flushed. "I never said your music didn't matter." "You didn't have to," Chaka replied evenly. "Your tone, your questions, your attitude, all of it suggested you think I should be grateful just to sit here. But let me be clear, Joy. I'm Chaka Khan. People don't do me favors by inviting me on their show. I do them favors by showing up." The audience was completely locked in. This wasn't gossip or spectacle anymore. It was a lesson in handling disrespect with intelligence, dignity, and devastating clarity. Joy's composure finally cracked. "I think you're being unfair and hostile." "Hostile?" Chaka asked calmly. "If I were being hostile, you'd know it. What I am is honest. And apparently you're not used to honesty about how your behavior affects people. That's not my problem. That's yours." Joy unraveled. Rising slightly from her chair, she pointed a finger and raised her voice. "I don't have to take this from you or anyone. This is my show. I'll ask whatever questions I want." The studio froze. Even the cameras seemed to pause. Everyone knew she'd crossed a line she couldn't step back over. Chaka didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply looked at Joy with the steady gaze that had humbled industry giants for decades. "Your show, Joy, let me tell you something about shows. I've headlined stages around the world since before you ever thought about television. I've commanded audiences of hundreds of thousands, people who paid to see me, This daytime talk show you're so proud of? It's cute, but don't confuse holding a microphone with having power over me." Joy opened her mouth, then closed it, speechless. She had never been spoken to like this on her own set. Chaka continued. "And another thing. Your show invited me. Your producers called my team because they wanted a legend on this set. So don't sit there pretending you're doing me a favor." "I'm the favor, honey." Whoopi frantically signaled the producers. Sarah looked visibly shaken. Sunny shook her head in disbelief, and Alyssa stared ahead, clearly memorizing exactly what not to do. Joy tried to salvage something. "I think you're being completely unreasonable." Chaka tilted her head and smiled that dangerous smile once more. "Unreasonable? What's unreasonable is believing you can disrespect a legend without being called out. What's unreasonable is thinking your little corner of daytime television gives you the right to talk down to people who were breaking barriers while you were still learning how to work a microphone." Joy's voice trembled with anger and embarrassment. "I've been in television for decades." "And you still haven't learned basic respect," Chaka replied without missing a beat. "Longevity doesn't equal quality, Joy. I've been in music for decades too, and I earned every second of it. But here's the difference. I've spent that time lifting people up, inspiring them, creating art that reaches people's souls. You've spent your time sitting behind this desk convincing yourself you're important because you get to question other people's accomplishments." The audience was spellbound. This wasn't just a celebrity disagreement anymore. It had turned into a full lesson on how to dismantle an ego with flawless precision. Joy made one last desperate grab for control. "I think we should end this interview right now." Chaka laughed, a deep, effortless laugh that filled the studio. "Oh, now you want to end it? After you started all of this?" She shook her head. "Joy, you don't pick a fight with the Queen of Funk and then decide to quit when you realize you're outmatched." Joy was visibly shaking, caught between anger and humiliation. "I did not pick a fight." "You absolutely did," Chaka replied, her voice steady and unbreakable. "From the moment I sat down, you decided to test me. You assumed I'd be like the other celebrities who come on here, smile politely, and accept whatever tone you use. But I'm not them, Joy. I'm Chaka Khan. And I didn't build a legendary career by backing down from bullies." The other host said nothing, silently watching a masterclass unfold. Joy had created this moment entirely on her own, and now she was facing the consequences. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I just don't think this is productive anymore." Chaka leaned forward one final time, her gaze locked in. "You know what isn't productive? Inviting someone onto your show and spending the entire segment trying to make them feel small so you can feel big. You know what else isn't productive? Questioning my relevance while sitting across from living music history. And you know what's really unproductive? Failing to learn from a moment like this." Joy was done. The fire she usually relied on was gone, extinguished by someone who had faced far tougher opponents than a daytime host having a bad segment. Chaka leaned back calmly, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. "Now, earlier you wanted to talk about my music. I do have a new project, one that celebrates resilience, standing up for yourself, and refusing to let anyone dim your light, just because they're uncomfortable with how brightly it shines." She paused. "Would you like to hear about that? Or would you rather keep this focused on your bruised ego?" Joy couldn't even meet her eyes. Maybe Whoopi should handle the rest. Whoopi immediately stepped in, eager to rescue what remained of the segment. "Chaka, we'd love to hear about your new project." Chaka's demeanor shifted instantly. She turned warm, open, and engaging. "Thank you, Whoopi. That's how you conduct an interview, with respect, genuine interest, and professionalism." The contrast was unmistakable. Chaka was deliberately showing everyone exactly how this conversation should have gone from the start. As she spoke with Whoopi about her music, Joy sat frozen, looking like she'd just survived a natural disaster. The audience was still processing what they'd witnessed. This wasn't just a clash of personalities. It was the complete dismantling of someone who believed they could disrespect a legend without consequences. The cameras caught every moment as Chaka seamlessly transitioned from a warrior defending her dignity back into the gracious, accomplished artist she's always been. The message was unmistakable. Respect is earned, not demanded. And when someone tries to diminish greatness, sometimes greatness reminds them exactly who they're dealing with. That day, Joy Behar learned what happens when you underestimate the intelligence, power, and grace of a true legend. Chaka Khan reminded everyone why she's called the Queen of Funk, not just because of her music, but because she commands respect the moment she enters any room. The segment ended with Joy sitting in stunned silence, while Chaka graciously thanked the other hosts and walked off the set like the queen she proved herself to be. It was a moment people would talk about for years, a perfect example of what happens when someone thinks they can play games with a legend and finds out they're completely out of their league. Chaka Khan showed the world one simple truth. Respect isn't optional. It's required. And when someone tries to take it from you, sometimes you have to take it back with interest. Make sure you subscribe for more unforgettable moments like this. And tell me in the comments, do you think Joy Behar learned her lesson? Or will history repeat itself with another guest?